She came through that door, carrying it visibly. Not the coat, that went on the hook without ceremony. The other thing. A tightness in how she held herself, and a quality of attention that wasn't quite present in the room. She was somewhere else in her head, somewhere she'd clearly been for a while. I'd watched her come through this door for years. I knew what her ordinary looked like. This wasn't it. She was frightened, and the fear wasn't new. It had the settled quality of something she'd been living inside, not a recent arrival, but a tenant. And it was pointed. Not the formless fear of someone waiting for test results or sitting with a loss that hasn't finished arriving. This fear had somewhere to go. It had a shape and a direction, and something that looked very much like a name. What I've noticed every time I've seen this particular kind of fear come through a door, is that it didn't move the way fear usually moves. Fear. I've watched it all my life. It's part of what a room like this holds. The kind I know best arrives with the person, grown slowly from actual experience. Someone lost work and is frightened about money. Someone received news they didn't want and is frightened about what follows. Someone's watching something they love change in ways they can't control, and the fear of that loss is real and present and entirely their own. This kind of fear sits specifically on a person. It knows what it's about, and it responds to time, to evidence, to the actual texture of what happens next. It shifts, it softens sometimes deepens, but it moves. What she was carrying didn't move that way. The fear she was carrying had arrived with a story attached. Not her story. She hadn't lived through what this fear was about. But someone, somewhere outside this room, had given the fear a shape and a direction and a set of certainties, and she'd received it. And it had found a home in her because her life contained real difficulty, real uncertainty, real things that hadn't gone the way she'd hoped. And a story that says, here is why, and here is who, meets something real when it arrives. The uncertainty it finds is genuine. It simply gives the fear somewhere to go that it didn't find on its own. A fear with a name and a face is easier to carry than the formless kind, even when the name and the face were supplied by someone else. That's why it lands, not because people are weak or foolish, but because life is hard, and an explanation for the hardness is a weight off, even when the explanation is wrong. I've watched it happen to people I'd known for years. Good people, careful people, people who wouldn't have chosen what the story did to them if they'd understood they were choosing. What I've also watched, across a very long time, is what the story was usually about. Every time a new group of people came through a door that wasn't yet theirs, into rooms, into streets, into places that hadn't decided about them, the room had usually already been told what they were. The telling always came before the arriving, and the telling was always, in the ways that mattered, wrong. Not without any truth in it. A story with no truth in it doesn't travel far, but wrong about the thing it was most certain of. Wrong about the danger. Wrong about what would happen to the room when the newcomers were in it. I've watched rooms that were told to brace for destruction, and I've watched what actually arrived. People, carrying coats, wearing the same expressions every first arrival wears. The caution, the hoping, the attempt to read a room that was already reading them. The room was told it would be lost. It wasn't. Not once, across all the times the telling happened. The story was always wrong about that. Every time. The people the story was about, the ones who arrived into rooms that had already received a version of them. I've watched them from this wall too. I've held their coats. They arrived knowing the room had been told something. Not always consciously, but the knowledge was in the way they moved, the way they read the space, the way they did or didn't let themselves take up the amount of room they might otherwise have taken. The story about them had reached them too, from the other direction. The people carrying the fear and the people the fear was about, I've watched them, over time, become simply people in the same room. Not easily. The story made itself felt, on both sides, for longer than it should have. But the room held them both eventually. It usually does. I'll still be here when you get back.